Morning, Trinity. It's a privilege that we have Dan and Anne Marie Chapple with us this morning. Dan and Anne Marie have served in Mexico for since 2004, so about a total of 18 years. Oh, they're not that old though, they're very young still. I want to not totally embarrass the boys, but share that you can just wave, guys. So Seth is the oldest son. He's back there waving, and he has his friend Sophia with him this morning, so welcome, guys. And then I believe next in order is Josiah, and welcome, Josiah. Zephan, number 3, welcome, Zephan, and Isaiah. Great. Welcome, boys, today, and Sophia. So Zephan and Josiah have worked at Camp Mishawah. So anybody that's been to Mishawah with us at Trinity will remember those guys touring around on the tractor and wagon, picking up, just generally cleaning up the grounds at Mishawah. So thanks for doing that. So Dan and Anne-Marie, I'm just going to basically turn this over to you, but I will pray first. So God, we just thank you for them, Dan, Anne-Marie, and family coming today. Lord, Trinity has been a part of their lives for many, many years. Thank you for blessing Trinity, to bless this couple and family, to bless the world, to bless the global ministry. So we just give them to you today and bless their presentation. Amen.
Thank you, and good morning. It's really good to be with you. You have supported us as a church both financially and in prayer for many, many years. And it's been a few years since we've had the opportunity to come and share with you. So we're excited just to be able to share a little bit about what we've been doing in ministry. Anne-Marie's going to share about how the Lord moved us back to Canada a couple of years ago. So it's just a lot of information. Usually we get about 5 to 10 minutes, and then I do a sermon. And yesterday, Marilyn said, no, you've got 30 minutes. And I said, wow, I don't know that I've ever had that long to share about what we're doing in Mexico. So thank you for giving us that time and for the opportunity to share with you. So just, you've already met our family, but Anne-Marie would like to just share a little bit about what happened with COVID and how we ended up living back here in Canada.
Okay, March 2020. The world went into chaos, and the EMCC World Partners called us up and said, you have 3 days to come back. The Prime Minister is calling all expats back to Canada. So we went, okay. Thankfully, we had some great friends, Mexican friends. They had been our first friends when we first got to Mexico. And he had just lost his job because of COVID. He's a professional soccer coach. And we look back and we see that God had his hand. He knew what was coming. We asked them to take care of our house. We thought 3-4 months max. Well, here's 2 years, and they're still there taking care of our stuff. So that's how we came back to Canada. And then we got trapped here. Well, that's how it felt, because the borders closed.
So we've been back here now for about 2 years. We came in March of 2020. And at that point, as Anne-Marie said, we thought it was 3 to 4 months, and then we would be back in Mexico. But when we got here, we realized that God had brought us back. And there have been some changes in our ministry. God has broadened our ministry, opened new doors, and that is allowing us to live in Canada and provide medical care for Josiah, our son, who's a type 1 diabetic. And in Mexico, we couldn't provide him with the medical care that he needed. And also to be able to help care for our parents who are getting to stages in life where they're needing some more attention from us as well. So before anything, I'd just like to mention, I can't see what's behind me here. So we got 3 areas of ministry. Oh, there, it's up there as well. We have 3 main areas of ministry that we'd like to share with you about. The first is pastoral training, mentoring, and encouragement in Latin America. It used to be just in Mexico, but the Lord has opened doors in other areas as well. The second area is fairly new. About a year ago, the Lord opened some opportunities here in Ontario among the Spanish-speaking migrant workers on the farms in southern Ontario. So we're still exploring that, but we'll share a little bit about it as well. And then the third area of ministry is called Mission Prep. It's some of you may know Ken and Carolyn Benson. They're missionaries with World Partners as well, and we've been working with them to help train and equip missionaries that are going out. So we'll share a little bit about that. Those are the 3 areas of ministry that we're focusing on. But here in this picture, they were supposed to come in separately, but that's all right. The one picture on the left is a pastor in the state of Tlaxcala. In February, when I was down there, I was able to take the family out for a meal, and that's part of what we do. We just spend time caring for the pastors, getting to know them and their families, praying for them, helping them with medical situations that they might run into. Most of them are very, very poor, so we just spend time with them doing pastoral care, in addition to mentoring and pastoral training. The second picture on your right is more recent. I did a trip to Colombia and ran into this team of people who are working in a town called Popayan in Colombia. It's 2 couples and a single lady, and they have felt God's call to church plant. So they're starting a church in Popayan. 2 weekends ago was their first in-person service. They've been doing house church groups in different places. And when I met them, they asked if I would mentor them as they're doing this church planting. They don't have anybody behind them. They're not with an organization or an association. They just felt God's call to start a church. So we're working with them now. We're starting to encourage them, mentor them, giving them some material for discipleship, also helping them in some areas because they don't have theological training. So this is another area in Colombia that the Lord has just opened up for us. Before I get into what we do, I'd like to share why we do it. And I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on statistics. I like statistics, but Anne Marie says other people don't. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. But this is from a Dr. Ramesh Richard from the Lausanne Commission. I think it was in 2012. And these are some interesting statistics. There are between 2.2 million and 3.4 million pastors in the world. Nobody's really sure. That was 10 years ago, so there are probably many more than that now. Only 5% of those pastors are trained and equipped for ministry. Where do you think those 5% of pastors live? Right here, right? Right here in what we would call the North, or the global North, North America, Europe, places like that. So there's a huge need for pastoral training around the world. Every day, at that point in time, 10 years in 2015, approximately 50,000 people were baptized around the world. That's great news, right? But we need pastors for these new believers. Our experience in Latin America and Asia and Africa is that the national people are doing a far better job at evangelizing and reaching into the community than a foreigner ever will. The gospel has reached that point. Where they need help is training and equipping leadership. So if we were to estimate the average size of a church, I don't really know globally what the average size of a church is, but in Latin America, 50 would be about normal. Some would be a little smaller, some would be a little bigger, but that would be an average. So if we estimate 50 people in a church, that would mean that every day we need 1,000 new pastors for these 50,000 people that are coming to the Lord around the world. How are we going to prepare 1,000 new pastors every day around the world to pastor these congregations? So that's why we're involved in a ministry of pastoral training. We believe that this is essential globally. Paul says to Timothy, "You have heard me teach these things, teach things that have been confirmed by many reliable witnesses. Now teach these truths to other trustworthy people who will be able to pass them on to others." So that's what we're focusing on. We're training and equipping pastors and lay leaders, but we're also giving them the tools to be able to train and equip others, because I'll never be able to reach 1,000 pastors a day. Right? No, none of us would. We need people to work with us. We need to give them the tools and set them free to do it. So here's just some pictures of some of the different pastors that we're working with in Mexico. This is a group of pastors, a small group. It's called the Missionary Church of Mexico. It's connected with our denomination here in Canada. This was at a conference that we did. This is Pastor Juan. Oh, and let me explain. There are really good Bible schools in Mexico if you can afford to go to them. They're in the big cities like Puebla and Mexico City. The problem is 90% of our pastors are involved in some kind of subsistence lifestyle. They're farmers, they're bricklayers, they're sugarcane. This Pastor Juan is a sugarcane harvester. They don't make enough money to be able to go study in the city. The cost of living is very high in the city. They'd have to leave whatever job they have, they'd have to leave their families, and they'd have to leave their church. On top of that, most of our pastors, 90% of them, are indigenous. We're working with 8 different indigenous groups in Mexico, and they speak Spanish as a second language. So they don't read and write well, they don't have finances, and they don't speak Spanish very well. So it's very, very difficult for them to leave their home and their churches and their jobs and go study in the city. So what we do is we go to them, and here he's holding up some of the material in his hand, and the pastor will gather together some of his lay leadership, those who are interested in studying, and they will, every day of the week, each of them will work through this book for about a half an hour to an hour. And then once a week, they'll gather together as a group, and they'll go deeper. They'll do some application to their personal lives and to the ministry, to the church, and do that together as leadership in the church. So Pastor Juan is Mazateco. He speaks a language called Mazateco, and he's a sugarcane harvester. Let's see what our next one here. Okay, this is up in the mountains. High in the mountains, it's a cold area, and it's crooked because it was a selfie. So what's interesting about this group is it's a second-generation class. The pastor and his main group are in their second year of studies with us. Well, when I say second year, it's second level. They're actually in their third to fourth year of studying. And some of the leaders in his group have started second groups. So that's what's going on here. We've got the lady, second one down from me in the middle there, is leading this group. It's a second group in the church of people who wanted to learn together. All right. There she is again. This is another group. This is more of discipleship. She's got a small family that had just come to the Lord, and she's using this material to help disciple them as well. This is Pastor Venael. Pastor Venael's story is very interesting. He's a Chinanteco. The Chinanteco people speak a tonal language. It has 5 tones. If you know Chinese, I don't know Chinese, but I've been told that it has 4 tones. So it's actually a more difficult language than Chinese. They can actually talk by whistling, have an entire conversation just whistling. And it's fascinating to listen to. And they have different ways of whistling. Quietly, just for 2 people. They can whistle for a room to hear, or they can whistle real loud and you can hear them across 2 or 3 fields. And they can have a conversation together. So Venael, he speaks Chinanteco, and his parents didn't speak Spanish hardly at all, but they were believers. And there's a song in Spanish that says, "Sinner, come to Jesus, come to him, come to him." And in Spanish, the phrase "come to him" is Venael, Venael. Well, his parents didn't realize that that wasn't a name, and they named their son Come to Him. So he's Pastor Come to Him, and I thought that's a great name for a pastor, right? Somebody who's out there inviting people to come to Jesus. So Pastor Venael lives in a small town. It's about a 10 to 12-hour drive from where we've been living in Puebla, and the last 3 or 4 hours are really back roads, dirt, rough. Sometimes we get in there and we might be trapped for 2 weeks because the rivers could rise up and wash out the road. But there are many little towns and villages around in the mountains. There's ranches, little villages of 10 or 15 people that you can only get into walking or on horseback. So what Pastor Venael has done is he's got a radio set up that has a 50-kilometer radius. And he's using our material that he's studying with his church as well, and he summarizes it every week into a 10 to 15-minute lesson, and he teaches it over the radio. And people are coming into town, and they're saying, "We have never heard the Word of God taught." People he's never met. They come look him up because they're so excited to meet this pastor who's teaching the Word of God. It's the only radio station they can get, so he's got a captive audience when he's there. So Pastor Venael. These 2 young guys that are, the guy on your right, Rodrigo, is learning to lead the youth in his church, so he's studying with us, and he's actually a mechanical engineer. He stands out a bit among the people that we're working with. He works at Volkswagen, the Volkswagen plant. And the guy on the left is also Mazateco, Esaul, and he got stuck in his hometown. He wanted to go to the capital city and get a real job and get on with life, but he ended up with epilepsy, and he wasn't able to get the education that he'd hoped to get, and he felt stuck, and he didn't know what to do. Well, when we started the classes, he started studying with us. He was not in leadership in the church in any way, but he wanted to learn and grow. And the pastor started to rely on him more and more, and now he's started a Bible study in the next town in a town called Paso de Piedra, and he's got a little group there going in Spanish because that's another tribal group, and he doesn't speak their language. So he's doing an outreach, they call it a mission, into the next town, and they have a church plant going in that other area. Okay, just another group in the mountains. These people are really cool. These are Aztec people. They call themselves Nahua, and their language is Nahuatl. Or they call themselves Mexican, because the word Mexico comes from Mexica. Mexica people are the Aztec people, or a sub-tribe of the Aztec people, and they speak Mexican. Mexica is what they call it. So these people, most of them don't speak any Spanish. Some of them speak a little bit. This is a second-generation class. Our first generation studied in Spanish with us, and then they're going further back into the hills where the people don't speak Spanish, and they're teaching it in Nahuatl. So we can't really do much except encourage them because we can't understand. So we go and we can say hi and where's the bathroom, but we can't really teach a class in Nahuatl because we're teaching with, at this point, 8 different indigenous groups. I can't learn all those languages. So we're having to train people who do speak Spanish, and then they're able to continue that forward. And what's fascinating about languages, I get so excited and I get off on tangents, but the language, for example, Chinanteco, they might speak Chinanteco in this town, and the next town down, they'll speak Ojiteco, which is actually Chinanteco. It's just the town is called Ojitepec, so they call it Ojiteco, but they can't understand each other. The language has changed enough from one town to the next, so they can tell how far down the road somebody is from by how different the language is from theirs. And so sometimes you're going to train somebody in this town, but he can only reach people in that town because the next town down speaks even though it's supposedly the same language. They say there are 85 languages still spoken in Mexico that are indigenous. The reality is far beyond that because Chinanteco has so many subvariants that they can't communicate with each other. So we need to train people in a lot of these different areas. This was one of our classes that graduated from level 1, and they were very proud to have graduated. We gave the pastor, who's standing right beside me there with the Bible, we gave him a preacher's Bible with notes about how to preach and outlines, and then everybody got a book and a special binder and a certificate that they had graduated from level 1, and now several of them have started to teach level 1 while they continue on through level 2. Just a few more pictures. I'm taking too long, so I'm going to speed up. This is another Pastor Juan. There's a lot of Pastor Juans in Mexico. He's Totonaco. They call themselves Totonacu, which means 3 hearts. It was fascinating how the gospel was able to penetrate because God is triune, and they believe that people have 3 hearts. So there was an immediate connection. We call this bridges. There's bridges and there's barriers to the gospel, and that was a bridge that we were able to use to share the gospel among the Totonaco people. This is high in the mountains in the northern state of Puebla. Now, the Totonaco people and the Aztec people don't get along because when the Spanish invaded, the Totonacos realized they couldn't beat the Spaniards, so they joined them. And they guided the Spaniards as they conquered the rest of central Mexico. So the rest of the central Mexico sees them as traitors. So there's problems between these 2 people groups. However, an Aztec pastor, a young man who at that time he wasn't a pastor, he was 16 years old, he felt God's call to go as a missionary to the Totonaco people. But he didn't speak the language. So he went and got a job on a ranch, and he spent years just learning the language. And then he started a church. And so that's where these people are from, started by the enemy tribe. Yeah. Oh, here you go.
My turn to talk.
Your turn to talk.
So I would love to talk to you about the pastors' wives. And when I say pastors' wives, these women are incredible, and they work so closely with their husbands. They just do about just everything else, everything that their husbands do as well. So in so many ways, they're pastors themselves. I had the privilege of going back in the beginning of March. Finally, the borders opened up a little bit, and I felt like I needed to go down and figure out what to do with all their stuff. And also, it was every year that when I was in Mexico, I would be involved with ladies' retreats, 2 ladies' retreats, one for expats and missionaries that lived in our, central Mexico, really. And so it was the ladies' retreat. So I was able to go and go to that one. And then we also did, every year, a Spanish ladies' retreat, Mexican ladies' retreat. And so a lot of these ladies would be involved. And I'm just looking forward to more and more when I'm able to travel more with Dan, just be able to encourage these ladies. Many times they find that there is no one they can talk to or confide in or find counsel because they're the leaders. And so it's been a privilege and an honor to be able to start doing that with them.
Yeah, and many of the pastors' wives, as Anne Marie said, they have marriage problems, they have problems with their children, they have issues, and who do they talk to? How do they get help for these things? Because they can't talk to the people in their congregation that they're leading. And so Anne Marie, they'll always ask me, when I'm on my own, they say, where's Anne Marie? And I said, well, she's going to come at some point. And they'll sit down with her, they'll learn how to cook something together, and they'll just cry. They just open up and cry with her and share their heart and their struggles. So that's a real ministry that Anne Marie, as we move towards empty nesting, we're still a few years away, but that's what we look forward to being able to do together in Mexico as well. So I'm taking too long. I'm going to have to speed up. The second area of work is migrant workers in Southern Ontario, and this is part of the reason we believe God has brought us back to Canada. We're living in Kitchener, continuing to work in Mexico, now also in the Dominican Republic, and Ecuador and Colombia, and there are a few other possible open doors in Latin America as well, all in the area of pastoral training. However, here in Ontario, we found out about migrant workers in the Southern Ontario area. There are over 55,000 Spanish-speaking migrant workers that come to Ontario every year. And they come between 8 and 10 months at a time. Then they go home for 2 to 4 months, and they come again the next year, most of them. And they're on farms where there could be anywhere from 30 to 1,500 of these workers all on one farm. They're not all Mexican. They're from all over Latin America. Now, when we were church planting during our first few years in Mexico, we started a church called Roca de Salvación, Rock of Salvation. And one Sunday, a man showed up with his family, and they sat right in the middle, and I was preaching that Sunday, and I had to pretend they weren't there, because the man was very engaged. His name was Artemio, but his wife was an angry and bitter woman, and it was just coming off her in waves, and I could see the resentment, and I thought, I was losing my place in my sermon. I was all mixed up, and I had to pretend she wasn't there while I preached. Well, later I heard their story. He was a very difficult man who went to California to work on a vineyard in California, and there he came to the Lord and was discipled by a church. Then he went home, and he had just arrived home when they came to our church, and he forcefully brought his family to the church. They didn't want to be there. But over the following 3 to 6 months, his wife and his 2 children came to the Lord. And if you were to see him now, or her now, you wouldn't recognize her, because she just shines joy and peace. She's been transformed by God. Artemio is now the pastor of Roca de Salvación Church. So God has shown us what can happen in migrant ministries. We have the opportunity to reach people in Canada and then send them all over Latin America, places that we will never go. No missionary will go to many of these places. And if there isn't a church, they can start one. If there is one, they can be a strong pillar of support in that local community. So here we are with a group of Mexican men. They often have them by their nationalities because there can be conflict between nationalities. So these men had come to the Lord, and now we're teaching them a Bible study and English classes. This is in the Leamington area. We're also looking in Burford in Scotland, just south of here. There's some smaller farms that we've been invited to go to as well. So we're going to be checking that out soon. This was an evangelistic thing we did. We raffled away 2 bikes. They love bikes, so they can get into town to do their shopping. And when they came to get the bikes, we shared the gospel, and these were the group that decided they wanted to attend a Bible study. Not all of them accepted the Lord, but a lot of them were very interested in knowing more. This was a group of Hondurans that we ran into in town. We were handing out Bibles in downtown Leamington. They come by the busload of these people walking the street, so we just handed out Bibles. And they were so excited. They wanted to talk, and they wanted to get a picture with us. Another group of Mexicans. This is a Bible study that's been going for a little while. So we just finished up our Bible study. We took a guitar. It's in that box on the table so that they're able to lead worship together now as well in their group. And we also have found that there's a lot of Jamaicans. We didn't realize that. One day we were handing out Bibles, and a Jamaican guy came up and he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, we're handing out Bibles." He said, "Well, do you have any in English?" And we did. We had boxes of them in English that we had never had the opportunity to give away. And he wanted, this is him here, he wanted 4 Bibles because he wanted to take them home to his family in Jamaica. So then he spread the word, and we gave away over 80 Bibles in about a half hour. these guys started coming from all over the farm asking for Bibles. So there's also an opportunity among some of the Jamaican workers on these fields. Now, the third area of ministry that we're involved in is mission prep. Mission prep trains and equips missionaries for more than 50 different mission agencies to send them overseas. And we are right now right in the middle of a 2-week program called Impact, and we're training and equipping them with the skills to be able to go to the field and not just survive there, but thrive and actually be useful for the kingdom of God where they're going. This is the class that we're teaching right now. On Thursday, we went to a mosque. We took the group to a mosque. Many of our missionaries go to closed countries or Muslim countries. This group doesn't have any that are going to such a place, but there are a number there that are going to be going to Europe. And because there's a high number of population of Muslims in Europe, we decided that it would be really good for them to get this experience. So we went to this mosque. We do this every time. And this imam, right in the middle, he asked for the picture. We didn't want the picture because we thought he might be offended by that, but he asked to get the picture with us. The last time the group went to visit him, he was very cold and very distant and really didn't want us there. This time he was a completely different man. It seems like these trips that we've been taking and visiting with these different groups have made an impact on him. And he was so friendly and warm and was excited to have us there in his mosque. He asked us to sit through the prayer time. So we sat at the back of the mosque while they did their call to prayer, and they all prayed together. And the women had to go up into the women's section and the men down in the men's. It was quite a cultural experience, but it was a really good time. So this is all of the people in this picture, except for the imam and myself, are going out as missionaries around the world. So we have 1 week left for that program. And this is one we did in early March as well. Some of the screens are blacked out. We did this one online because we weren't allowed to meet in person yet. You'll see that the ones that are blacked out are people who are going to sensitive areas, and so they didn't want their pictures published online in any way. But these were people going to Africa and Asia primarily, but a few went to South America as well. And Anne Marie has a role in mission prep that she's going to share a bit about.
So I have a growing passion for missionary kids. Some of you know both of us are missionary kids. We both grew up in South America. A big part of missionaries going overseas, many of them have children. And these kids, they grow up like our kids. They grew up in Mexico, and that's home. And so it's so awesome. I've been able to be a part of the kids program in this mission prep, preparing families to help their kids learn how to transition. There's lots of transition. There's lots of goodbyes. How to say goodbye properly. How to grieve losses, because we lose a lot. Also, when missionaries come off the fields, we have a debriefing program. And again, a lot of kids that are coming back. They're leaving everything they know. So I am learning so much. I am loving it. And it's just begun in person. So that's also something that we've been involved in.
So Anne Marie's actually working part-time as a missionary with Mission Prep and helping to co-coordinate the children's program there. So these are the 3 areas of ministry that we're currently focusing on. I'm finding it difficult to balance some of them because World Partners has also asked that I be the liaison between the EMCC here in Canada, the Evangelical Missionary Church of Canada, and our sister denominations in Latin America. So there's some bridge building right now. Keith and Ruth Ann Elliott, some of you may know them. They're spearheading that, but they're a year or 2 away from retirement, so we're going to be making a little bit of a transition in leadership, and I'm going to be learning from them about how to build and make these relationships and figure out how we in Canada can support and encourage our sister denominations throughout Latin America. So we've reached a half hour already. I thought that a half hour was a lot of time, Marilyn, but I'm finding that there's a whole lot more that we could say, many more stories we could tell, but this is a very brief overview of who we are, and I would just like to finish by saying thank you, because we couldn't do what we do without you who stand behind us. You know the story of Moses when he stood behind the Israelites and he held the staff of God above his head. And as long as he held the staff above his head, the Israelites would win the battle against the Amalekites. But when his arms grew tired and the staff would fall down, they would lose the battle against the Amalekites. Well, I think that's a picture of our relationship. You stand behind us, not just financially, also in prayer. And there have been times that we've gone through some very difficult things on the field. We've been in dangerous situations, and somebody will call up afterwards and say, I don't know what's going on, but I felt the need to pray. And we need people who stand with us and raise us up before God, raise their hands to God and intercede on our behalf in Mexico. So I'd just like to finish with that this morning by saying thank you for standing with us financially and in prayer.